Well, we've got a packed room here today. So welcome to the AI ethics and copyright session. Somebody did say to me, you're just going to put up a Claude or chat logo and then leave everyone to it, but we thought we probably shouldn't do that. So I've got a great panel here with me today. This topic we could chat about for hours. We've had a couple of briefing calls, and we could definitely chat about it for hours. So we do only have 35 minutes. You can put any questions on Slido. I don't know if we'll get to a huge amount of questions, but I think most of you that are here are going to be around after the session. So if you want to come and ask anybody anything after that, we can do that. So I'm going to get everyone to introduce themselves. Amanda is also going to do a bit of explanation for a couple of things for us. So we're going to be basically looking at the legal and the creative side of the AI and ethics situation, which is probably changing every day, by the way. So something might have changed since our call last week. Actually, if we start with you, Rob, if you just explain who you are, what it is you do.
Hello, my name's Robert Guthrie. I'm a partner at the law firm Osborne Clarke, and I'm in their intellectual property team, so advising a range of media clients and AI developers about these sorts of issues.
We'll then go to Thierry, and then we come up this way, so then Amanda can explain a couple of legal terms.
Hi, my name is Thierry. I'm head of production at an animation studio called Blind Pig. We're also a sister company to Absolute Post, so we cover things like design, illustration, animation, VFX, and general post-production, and recently AI.
Excellent.
Hi everyone, my name is Guy Gadney. I'm CEO of Charismatic AI. If you want to find out more about what we do, just turn around and you can see our booth right there. So come and say hello after. That's going to be the fastest way to do it.
Perfect.
Hi, my name's Amanda Goddard. I work for a group production company called Argonon. We make things like Masked Singer, Lost Treasures of Egypt. And prior to that, I was actually head of legal at PAC, so I did a lot of negotiations. So obviously been across this in a historical way in the past with conversations. So in my opinion, the easiest way to explain how the government's opt-out position is if you think about data protection, which is you have to opt in. So if anyone wants to use your information or your personal information or send you ads, you have to consent, tick the box, and opt in. The government instead, unless you actively opt out, then they can data mine and use your material effectively. That's probably the easiest way I could explain it to you without getting into
hours.
Unless, of course, Robert, as my fellow learned lawyer, has a different opinion.
Yeah, well, I suppose just the thing to add on that is, that was the original proposal in the consultation which was launched, I think, December 2024. And the latest indication in a report that was published in March is that they're sort of going to wait and see about whether to bring that exception in, which content owners would have to opt out of. So that's the current position, is that the UK government is sort of waiting to see how the landscape develops before deciding whether to implement that exception.
And then Amanda and then Rob, what do you think about the wait-and-see approach? I mean, what's it going to do with UK producers?
If they do an opt-out?
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm honest, I think it's a horrendous approach. They're just pushing the problem back on all of us to fix it. It's not really a problem. They're just saying, okay, you guys, you're going to have to work with it and find your way. It's exactly where we were 3 years ago when they were all in a room saying, how do we make this work? And everyone walked away. So I think that they're forcing us again, rather than finding regulation or a system, because they're making us work out the problem. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind working out a problem with the best of them, but if the government doesn't create any kind of true kind of safeguards or role models, then it is going to get messy.
Yeah. Rob, is there anything you want to add?
Well, the thing I would mention is the sort of international angle here, in that we're talking about what the position would be in the UK, and meanwhile most of the development and training of AI models is taking place in the US or elsewhere. And so the question is, not having this exception in place in the UK, it might be helpful to content creators in theory, but is their content still just going to be taken and used to train AI models over in the US, which can then be brought into the UK and commercialised. And the only sort of AI copyright case which is going through the UK courts at the moment, which is this Getty case that people may have heard of, sort of illustrates this point very well, because Getty basically had to sort of withdraw their their primary copyright infringement claim because they couldn't prove that any training had taken place in the UK.
Okay.
And they had this secondary claim which said, well, it's being trained on our content over in the US, it's coming here, it should be treated as an infringing copy. But that claim was sort of thrown out by the judge as well, on the basis that there weren't any copies of their works that stayed within the model. And that case is on appeal. It's going to the court in November this year. But at the moment, that is the sort of position. There's an argument that says, well, content creators, they're not really protected because this can just be taken away and dealt with in a more favourable jurisdiction.
Having two content creators down this end, what is it? I mean, what do you feel about this wait and see approach?
So we look at it, and always have looked at it, through two lenses. One, we have to get stuff done. I'm not the sort of person, I don't think we're an industry which will just sit back and do nothing. That's not the right approach. So if you do something, you've got an option of looking at this process through two lenses, a moral one and a legal one. The legal one we've just covered in some ways, which is unknown. So that means we fall back on, what should we do? We, as Charismatic AI, we're the only studio in the world to have employed a professional digital ethicist from day one. That was our first point, was to say, think about it, make a decision about what's right and what's not, and then you can put up your best argument. That means that we engage with the thorny issues. I mean, we were talking about this only just before the panel, the last 4 years of talking about AI in the creative industry. I've been in AI in the creative industry for 15 years, believe it or not. So we've seen these sorts of trends come and go. But ultimately, I think the conundrum we're in at the moment, all of us, is you've sort of got two options. Either you do not do anything and you deny it, in which case what's going to happen is that everyone else around the world is going to steal a march on you individually, your business on a broader sector, and the sector in this country as a whole. Or you choose to engage with it. And that, at least within your own environment, allows you to learn. So our approach is always sort of, first, best foot forward, do the best thing you can, learn around every element of the workflow, from script generation all the way through to the end result, through out into making movies and so forth, which we've got 3 movies launching on cinema screens this year, all 100% AI. That's new. No one else has done that. And someone has to do it, so let's make it be us.
Yeah, I think I definitely relate to what you're saying. I think we've taken a stance about 2 years ago when the first AI brief came through the door. Is like, are we going to take it or leave it? And we decided we want to take it and we want to give this a go. And I think we've learned a lot in the process. But we have turned to a lot of legal advisors and lawyers over the last year and a half, and nobody really had answers. So we were, like you're saying, left to our own devices, and we figured it out, and we're still figuring it out. But I think deciding what's ethical to us in the use of AI and what's ethical as a broader decision-making process in the creative industries. We've created think tanks with agencies, production companies, brands, and sit around a table and say, if we were to use AI, how does that sit with you, and what are the sort of policies on your side? And a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that barely existed. There were no policies on the client side and on our side, to be honest. But that's evolved a lot. So it is still the Wild West.
I was going to say, is it
still Wild
sounds
Wild
like
West?
The Wild.
But it's getting better, and I think we're starting to speak the same language as we progress.
Yeah. Amanda, on our call, we were talking about chain of title. Quickly explain what chain of title is for the people that don't know, and then I'm going to ask you a question about chain of title.
Well, let me first explain to you how I look at copyright.
Yeah.
I look at copyright as who owns it, who controls it, and who makes money from it, okay? So when you go into a chain of title to a broadcaster, you have to make sure that you have taken the right lawfully and that you, as a producer, have made sure you have the right licenses in place, and then you pay for them, or you say, I'll give you a royalty share. There's the collective agreements are in place, and when you can have independent negotiation, we're not a state where anything's dictated that way. In fact, our WGGB writers agreement is 7 pages. The US is about 650. I've read it. But the WGGB agreement allows a lot of agents to negotiate for their talent independently. So there's a lot of great things about the UK copyright. And just can I say, I know I'm going to change the title in a second. UK, in my opinion, has one of the best copyright frameworks in the world. And we should be leveraging ourselves, not doing what the US say because they tell us what to do, or do what China's doing, or doing what the EU says. We should be a bridge for all of them. And I am. So when you come to chain a title, I have a legal obligation when I pass that to the broadcaster that they know the viewer knows what they're seeing, they understand who and what it is, and I'll have responsibility on Watershed too, who's watching it, and I have made sure that it's right who's going on scene. I mean, obviously you have qualifications if you're dealing, is it, fair use, quotation, effectively, but you have a framework that you work on when you do that. And the reason why I do that is that if I make a mistake on my chain of title, is my E&O insurance will cover me.
So do you think...
Provided I've done it lawfully.
Exactly. Do you think as a lawyer you can guarantee that for a show made with AI, or can you guarantee this chain of title?
It's difficult.
Is it too washy?
I mean, certainly what Getty is doing is that when they use their own, they get permissions from the images, users who have it, and they train off their materials, but as I understand, they get permission, what Getty does, and then there is a payment back to those people if you use their images, and so that they're transparent in it. So you're feeding, remember the creative system is an ecology system, it feeds itself. So at some point, and I am a big fan of innovation, TV creatives, writers are all innovative, they're always wanting to push the boundaries, but we have to work out what our system is together. It's a cyclical system in my opinion. So we are doing one show right now where we have a presenter, we have to get permission from him, we have to explain to him how we're using it, and it's a closed position, it's our images that we're uploading. So you can, but you have to have checks and balances.
Yeah. Rob, anything on the legal side?
Yeah, well, I suppose from my point of view, there's 2 issues that are coming with the use of AI. One, is there a risk that the AI tools you're using are spitting out somebody else's content, and there's an infringement there, and that is about having using the right tools, having the right processes in place, having the right contractual guarantees in place to try and minimise those sorts of risks. And then the other issue is this issue about whether content that is wholly generated by AI doesn't actually attract copyright at all, because it is a fundamental requirement for copyright protection, human creativity. And so that issue has to be thought about as well. And that is a massive sort of grey area at the moment. And when it's a human AI model combination, what level of input from the human is required to sort of mean that that's protected by copyright?
Does it make a difference with international deals as well?
Well, I mean, international, obviously, it's a grey area everywhere. I mean, there's some jurisdictions it looks like you definitely need human creativity for copyright protection, like the US and the EU, possibly the UK as well. Other jurisdictions like China, you might not need that, but that sort of boundary about how much human input is required for copyright protection, that's a very grey area at the moment, and it could be different answers in lots of different jurisdictions.
Can we talk about money with all of this? Makes the world go round, apparently. Should we be paying for IP to train the models legally and morally?
Well, I'll pick up the beginning of it, because I was fortunate. Oh, by the way, apologies for the cough if you're wearing headphones. And that.
if you just got deaf.
Really, I've been trying not to cough in. Apologies for that. I was fortunate enough to be invited to give a sort of witness testimony to the House of Lords on this, and the same question came up. And my sense is that we talk a lot about copyright and the legality of it, and that's important. But my answer was peel away those layers and follow the money. Follow the money right from where the moment the screen is or where the consumers are, right the way back to the person who made that particular piece of copyright. That that work, that element, whatever it is. Because if you can follow the money in whatever production you're doing, right the way back to that, you can then start to make your own choices as to whether you want to employ actors or you want to employ DOP or you want to do a hybrid, which is the most sort of common approach. So follow the money is without a shadow of a doubt a good way to look at it. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier about the two lenses, one moral and one sort of legal or political. Yeah. They're two different perspectives.
I mean, if you think about blockchain, it's a distribution ledger, right, of rights. I don't know why we can't create something, I mean, we've got a lot of smart people here, where you allow, when you data train, you actually follow the data. For example, that Getty image case, if they were able to prove that they had trained on UK, it would have been a done deal in my opinion, right? So why aren't we creating a model that allows you to data track and data train and create a distribution the way they do with Content ID? So you put your stuff on YouTube, other people use it, you get a royalty share for it. Yeah. There is models out there, we're just not catching up. And don't get me wrong, I don't think the horse is bolted. If you think back in 2006, 17% of the world were internet user. Now it's 70%, roughly 76% are internet global user. Currently, global users of AI is 17%. So, but I think it will obviously probably be less than 10 years. I think we're probably looking at a very so it hasn't bolted. It's just what we do next is really important.
Do you feel like the industry is coming together to solve this? Is it?
There will be forced to, if depending what the government decides to do, yes. Because eventually I do believe that we, look, AI describes itself as an architecture, right? If you do Myers-Briggs, it says I'm an architecture, which is also what Elon Musk is. They just want, and they're architectures. And if you look at a lot of people who are creatives, they are creatives. They're not maybe as, they have the same goal. It's just how they approach the problem is different. Maybe I'll ask AI how we solve the problem. Under ChatGPT.
I haven't got the answer to that one. Do you want to add anything on money?
I suspect we are going to move to a world where there is payment that's being paid to content creators. The question is, how much money is that going to be, and what are the mechanisms through which that money will flow, and who will it flow to? Will it flow to authors and creators, or will it flow to big corporates? That sort of framework about how that license revenues is, that's still up for grabs, I think.
You could be clever about this, since this is another thing that government hasn't. You have to remember that in TV or lots of creative industry, writing a script, that 31, 35, 40,000 pounds is a sunk cost. We don't get R&D tax credit on it, right? It is just we call it wasted, but you put that money into music, art, it's a sunk cost. We don't get tax credits on it. Whereas in contrast, people who are creating tech, using that modeling, is getting R&D tax credit. Years ago, we had the issue with tape, if you remember. I don't know how old this audience is, but I'm old enough to remember cassettes and having fights with my sister over VHSs and who got to record it. And they created the levy, right? Which we have compact and stuff like that. So like I said, there are many models where creative industry, and we will find a solution. Either way, if the government doesn't, we'll find a way through, because you have most people who've moved into AI have came from the creative, who I have met, apologies, have also understand the creative sector and came from the creative sector. Yeah. So they know the issue. It's just how we solve it.
How you solve it.
And actually, to chip in on what Amanda says, if you're interested in this, there was a paper called ACCCT, ACCCT, that was convened by, I know, it's like ACC. But that was a paper on how blockchain could be applied exactly to this point, and that remunerate back to creators.
Talking of the creator side, Thierry, from your point of view, has AI made animation faster, or have you just moved the workload from artists to legal and compliance?
Both, actually. It has definitely sped up certain processes. I think that we found immense benefit in using certain tools in certain instances. But it's not cheap and fast. It's potentially cheaper and faster depending on what the creative ask is. And we sort of have to dissect every brief, every potential job that comes through that has some AI inclusion, and on a case-by-case basis, and see what's the best use case here and what tools work for this. And sometimes we actually recommend against the use of AI in some instances, that this is actually beautiful, a traditional sort of piece of animation or piece of content. And sometimes we think, actually, with that budget and that timeline, forget about it, you need some AI in there. it definitely has asked a lot more from the legality side of things, and we have a good case in point is that we did this really beautiful project last year called The Glass Hermit. You can Google it on YouTube. It's a film by Shona Heath, who won the Oscar for art directing Poor Things, and we had this crazy AI film brief, which was fantastic. But the contract didn't get signed until a week before the delivery of the film.
Wow.
Because it took as long to produce the content as it did to work out the legality of what we're using, how we're using it, which platforms, and so on. That was still about a year and a half ago, so that was still early days. There's no such early days, a year and a half ago. It's evolved a lot since, and there's a lot more templates in place and learnings that were made. But I think a lot more consideration, even from a production perspective, I don't know how you feel about it, I have to think about the legal side of things way more than I did before. And obviously, we're all starting to become lawyers and IP experts and things, which we never had to in the past.
Exactly. I mean, everyone talks in AI about replacement of skills. Are you having to convince your high-end artists that their job's not going to go? Is that a constant battle? Or?
It's a huge conversation in the industry as well as in our studio. I mean, it's definitely been a concern. But it depends on the approach you take with AI. I think you can take various approaches, and what we don't do in our instance, from our point of view, we don't do full Gen AI. We call it integrated AI, so we use AI tools as and when we feel it's the right application, and we maximize the creative and the artistic input in any process that has AI included. So if that's originating characters or illustration or shot plates, or we have a director supplying us these things, we also make sure that anything that's not originated is licensed, and that then informs the AI that we're using, the AI model that we're using. And then on the tail end of it, we also do a lot of it in human finishing, so there's a lot of compositing. I'm getting a bit technical, but there's a lot of work that goes into refining what the AI spits out.
Yeah.
And we've seen, especially on the commercial side of things, when we work with advertisers, when there's product involved, when there's marketing teams involved, that they are very exacting, and AI might get you 70, 80% there in our case, the way we use it. And then there is a lot of tidying up and a lot of finishing.
Yeah.
And there's a massive contingency of creativity and artistry that goes into it. So no, we haven't put anyone out of a job yet. Yeah. And we're not planning to. And we're using it really in an integrated way.
And this question to all of you, how do you maintain trust with audiences? There's not an M-dash version of content creation.
We were using AI in a show, like I said. I think it was like going to a very remote area, and you were trying to blow up and let people see around it. And AI was a very, using generative AI, like I said, in a certain way. They have got tools now where they're better. But I was comfortable with it because, one, we were telling the broadcaster we were using it and what we've done to mitigate the risk down. But also, what was being said is they were doing a notification, if that makes sense, to say this is what is, just so you're aware, this is what it is effectively. That's for TV. The difficulty you have is, obviously, everyone is moving on screen, and it's YouTube's and it's channels, and so that content doesn't have the same kind of obligations as we do under Ofcom rules. Yeah. So am I happy with my children watching stuff that they don't know if it's real or not, and they think this kid's diving off a hill, and I'm like, that's actually not safe.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I think I look at it the other way around, which is that there is going to be, I'm not worried about it too much. I think there's going to be so much AI content, and there already is on pretty much every ad you see on TV at the moment, but it's not labeled. What would be better is to label human content in the same way that we label organic milk or organic food, because what we're doing is then we're heroing the bit we want, which is the organic bit, and then we pay more for it. Because, but it's my view.
I disagree with you.
Okay, good.
The reason why I disagree with you is because AI can be used to create fraud. AI modeling can be used to target people with harmful images. And we know that to be true because you see the stuff that's happening right through, and there's a massive big situation now of people using trademarks to then obviously get money from people. So I disagree with you that we should be but for this is real. I think that you do social media, you say that it's an ad. I don't think that AI, we're at this stage, maybe in the future, maybe in 20 years when we have this conversation, I will say, I'm sorry, you were right, Guy, we should have done the other way around. But at this stage, I don't think that AI should be considered to be it should be the exception, not the rule.
Is there a legal aspect, do you think?
Well, I mean, one aspect I was thinking of, which has sort of come out of the government's consultation, which they're planning to do, is legislate against people sort of creating sort of digital replicas of real
that's
people,
a huge issue.
Which at the moment is a bit of a legal grey area in the UK because there's no image rights as such. But I can see, certainly if you're creating AI content where it looks like it's a real person saying words or doing certain things, that has sort of a lot of danger for society.
Yeah.
So I can.
Sorry. I just want to say, again, we're sort of ballparking everything into that term AI, and it means so many different things. And I think we have to really, really dissect what level of AI was used. We're talking about percentages earlier. I mean, it's really hard to say, in your case, maybe it's 80, 90, 100% AI. In our case, it might be 40, 50. I think it also depends on the risk levels of the AI being used. We, for example, do a risk assessment of what the tools and what the output is that we're using with AI ahead of every job, and saying what is actually potentially risky, if it's deepfakes, or if it's recreating imagery of existing celebrities or people, or if it's just a set extension, or if it's just cleanup in AI. So there's so many use cases of AI that are at different risk levels, and I think it's quite broad. So anything that might have utilized a bit of AI technology might not qualify to be watermarked or be flagged, but if it's it's really hard to discern, actually.
Yeah.
And actually, building on that, one of the things that came out from the ethics sort of DNA that we built into the company, and one of the things I would recommend you do as you're looking at this, is what Lisa, who is our digital ethicist, called consequence scanning. So it's a bit like your risk assessment, but whenever you make a decision about which AI tool or whether to use it, just have a consequence scan for the intended or unintended consequences, which you, in your own heart and your mind, might think are applicable in that case. And you'll probably, it's not going to capture everything, but it'll capture the things that, might be embarrassing down the track.
I mean, I think that's a really interesting point you raised about morality. Under the Copyright Act, you have moral rights, which is the right to be identified and named, credited. Okay. And you also have the right for your work not to be used derogatory, right?
Yeah.
So if we have no control over it, you don't even know if it's going to be used, for example, in a deepfake in a way that you don't want to do, which is why I think the data training and modeling and knowing where it's going is very important. And also, and I don't know if this, I'm putting this question out there, I don't know where that data is being trained. We don't know if it's the dark web. We don't know where it comes from. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, by the way, FYI. I'm not at all. But I believe very much in transparency.
Yeah.
And I think that is fundamental when you're dealing with people's rights as well. And what you're doing, I think, is very sensible, because you're approaching about it of what would I want to happen to me is how you use that. So I think when you create AI systems, like you say, I think there is an obligation, like when you're working with people, to make sure they're paid the recompense, and that you obviously feed the same people that you take from effectively. Yeah. You've got to feed your young.
I mean, what's for a producer that's in this audience today, what's the single most important clause they should be putting into their contracts, freelance or talent, to protect yourselves? I mean, is there that one clause?
I'll let Robert go first.
Well, this magic clause here.
Exactly, which I've AI'd.
I mean, obviously, I think you have to think. I mean, we're talking about so many different use cases of AI and all these sorts of things. So, obviously, you have to make a decision how you want to use AI and to sort of put that in the contract. But I think probably more important than what's in the contract is having those discussions with people, and so everyone's on clear what it is. The contract's probably not going to be looked at.
It's going to be signed and forgotten.
Exactly. Yeah.
Personally, I would love to see clauses where it says that you treat AI like you do data protection. It's not far off, in my opinion, right? So the EU AI Act created a fine of a global turnover of your company if you breach it, right? The same way they do with GDPR. So I think you have to remember, it's not just copyright, because sometimes they can have privacy rights, they can have confidentiality information in it. Not every, like I said, we don't know what's being data mined, so you don't know what's being used sometimes. So I think you just have to be, if I'm looking at a clause, or if I'm taking rights, I want to make sure that I'm using, if I'm going to use AI, that I will use the best, safest model that provides an element of recompense if it's available, that is morally and ethically using, and is closed. It's trained off, I know where it comes from. It's off a closed circuit. It's not like just training. So, I am very mindful about what we use. And also what the company is doing reputationally, to be honest, because as you saw what happened in the news, everyone was using one side of thing, and then a broadcaster's like, I'm going to sue them. I don't want to use a tool that my broadcaster or someone else ends up suing.
Yeah.
That's been the biggest part of the conversations we've had actually with our clients over the last year and a half, 2 years, is rewriting our contracts, and then obviously that trickles down to our freelancers and our creative staff and so on. And there are certain things that we absolutely ring fence, such as what software they're using that has to be approved by the chain of command, really. So sometimes we're quite limited in what we're using. So whoever's working on it has to adhere to these rules, using only the company licensed software and only working on our licenses. Also making sure that we have trackable record of the input material or the prompts, whatever that might be. We have been asked in the past to actually supply with a workflow or with the prompts that we've used for a project. So we had to sort of create a project file that doesn't quite exist in AI the way it does in other software, but we had to sort of be able to present that and prove that nothing IP risky was put into the process. But all of these things can definitely be managed. The main challenge is that everybody wants to push the indemnity on somebody else.
Yeah.
So what we've seen is the client pushes it on the agency pushes it on production company puts it on post animation. So it really is sort of a chain of who's taking this responsibility of the risks that do come still with AI. And no matter what the contract says, and no matter how closely you manage it, there's still the indemnity that somebody has to then be responsible for, and we still haven't come to a conclusion as to who that should be.
Yeah. I mean, if you're working with a company that is already being responsible and ethical before the government and says this is how you have to behave, I think that's a good sign, basically.
Yeah. I mean, somebody's asked about, are there organisations such as the ICO that can advise on contributions?
On
ICO, well that's...
Yeah, that can advise on ways contributors can specifically request if their image has been sold to AI LLMs. Not yet.
So the ICO is the Information Commissioner, which deals with data protection. You can really only go to them when you have a complaint or proof of a complaint, effectively, right?
Yeah.
So they have rules in terms of how you use this. So if you think somebody's doing it, your option is, under the Data Protection Act, is to do a subject access request. The difficulty you have is whether if you don't have the information, you don't have to supply it.
Yeah.
So if I can't prove to you that they've trained on that, you're never going to find out about it.
I'm going to ask we've got hardly any time left, but somebody has asked, how can we navigate the landscape of AI models trained on stolen content, especially with future models potentially using outputs from compromised models?
Well, look, let me pick up on that quickly. As a studio which is currently working with all the networks in the UK, Hollywood studios and everything, we get this a lot. It starts, and Thierry referenced it, with workflow. Start thinking about the workflow. The workflow for an AI production, for a TV series or a microdrama or film, is slightly different. To understand that workflow, come and talk to us about it. We'll tell you what the workflow is, and that's what practically you need to put into the contract. As regards which model to use and which not, it's a huge prevailing wind that's shifting very, very, very fast. There are no good actors now.
There is
no one's clean.
No one is being required to, by the government, to create a system that allows your copyright, when it's been, it's been data mined. I'm going to give you a bit of a history lesson, so bear with me. In, I think, 2000...
We've got 1 minute.
1 minute. Back in the day, Legal Deposits Act, everyone was legally obliged to put in an article into the newspaper. British museums, we all have to do it for historical purposes. They started data mining website. Personally, I think that's when things started getting data mined, but I am sounding a conspiracy theorist now, so I do apologize. But there is no, in my opinion, model that tracks the data of copyright, even derivative versions of it. There's no model that is like a Bitcoin that has a distribution ledger across it. There's nothing, in my opinion, that currently allows you to actually find solutions. So if they are training on your copyright stolen media, you've got no way to find them until you re-upload it and train it and do it again, and then you can capture it. So I don't believe there's anything out there, but if somebody was to require it to happen, then I think they could very quickly
make it. What a great new business idea for somebody in the audience. I'd like to say thank you. I think somebody has asked about your ethicist and what sort of stuff that they're working on. But I think you can probably, if that person's in
Come
the
and
audience,
ask me
they can
afterwards,
go
I'll
and
tell you.
ask Guy.
And I would recommend working with her totally. So I will pass that
I mean,
on.
where did you find such a person?
We wrote a paper on the ethics of AI and the creative industries back in 2018 together. So it was a joint paper together.
Wow, that sounds like a great job. So, and one that careers people probably wouldn't know about in schools.
Correct.
But maybe they should. So on that note, thank you very much to my panel. Thank you for listening. And yeah, come and ask the guys gals any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.